Right. Why don't you get us started, Marshall?
Okay. Suppose I'll give us a clap.
Let's go for a clap. Double
Yeah.
clap this time.
Double clap. So there's no room for error at all.
There's no room for error. It has to be done. It has to be done now.
It'll be perfect. Well, hello, Hugo.
Hello, Marshall.
To see you. Hello, anyone listening or watching.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Psychophiles podcast. So thanks for joining us. And I just thought I'd jump in and start interviewing you. So
Lovely.
you'll be my guest for the
In
time
this
being.
case, in this case, I thought I was going to interview you, but it seems that it goes the other way around. I'm happy to be interviewed as well. And if I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction as well
Yeah, please.
to the Psychophiles, what we're trying to do here is introduce common situational topics such as work, personal life, things like that, to a broader audience and try to integrate a little bit of psychology, a little bit of understanding and reflection on these kinds of subjects.
Yeah.
So, personally, I think that there's a lot of really, really good stuff, really interesting, fascinating insights to be gained through even the most mundane situations, like let's say you're going on the bus somewhere and you see a bunch of people who are getting frustrated because it's getting late. So I think there's just
Mm.
so much psychology to be seen all around you. And so discussing a little bit about that and trying to understand a little bit more about the principles that underlie it, I think that's a really great point of discovery for everyone.
Yeah.
So this is something that we're going to be exploring. So, what's your question, Marshall? What do you want to know about me?
Tell me everything about you.
Well,
Tell me a bit about you, not professionally, but just personally.
mm,
Give me a bit of a story.
well, this story begins 20 years ago since I'm just 20. I'm like a infant. Um, I was actually born in Poland. I was born in Kraków, Poland, which is an interesting place to be born because you've got a lot of remnants from communism. And so there's still a little bit of a mentality of like, we have to save money, we have to save things. And so I remember my grandmother always telling me, you have to eat everything that's on the plate. And she would load that plate up with
Oh
everything.
yeah.
So it was really funny.
Yeah.
And that's something that has really held over. Like with my dad right now, he still has that attitude, um, that somewhat like preservationist attitude. We
Mhm.
have to save money. We have to save this. We have to save that. And I think that's usually related with the context at the time, which is no one had money, no one had food. You
Mm.
had to go to like a hour or 2 hour long line to even get bread or
Mhm.
sugar. And so my dad was telling me stories about that just recently because I went to him to Poland, and he showed me an old store where um, the socialists would essentially allot a certain amount of bread to the community, and you could wait for 2 hours and then not even get it. So there was one little story with my dad where he went to such a line because there were two lines, one for sugar, one for bread. And he went to a line like that, and he waited 2 hours only to realize that he was in the wrong line. He wanted bread, he was getting sugar. And then the lady gave him sugar into like a dirty rucksack that he had.
Oh.
So just imagine that kind of context, learning more about the really the depravity of living in such an environment. I think I mean, the people are incredibly strong. Polish people are very industrious, very strong. And I think that's something that kind of seeped over into me. I've enjoyed the fact of being hardworking, of doing things that kind of innovate. I think that's a lovely, lovely um, habit that a lot of people like that have. I mean, the Polish economy is growing incredibly well. It's like some people are calling it the little Germany right now because Germany has grown over the last few decades,
Oh
and
yeah.
so Poland is kind of following suit. It's just smaller by population. So that's kind of the historical context
You
which I'm
sound
coming
proud of
from.
your country.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Right now, politically, there's quite a few things going on which I'm not proud of.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that it's a up and coming country.
Mhm.
It's I think that the better Polish people are off, the better Europe is off, and the better the world is off.
Yeah.
So I think it all contributes to each other. I think that's kind of the argument for many kinds of countries to grow prosperous. It's we want everyone to be happier, so there's less chaos in the world. So there's less likelihood that there's some going to be some terrorist organization, some radical
Yeah.
people who are gonna try to blow up everything because they're
Just
just disenchanted with themselves.
it's about stability, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, it is. So I completely that's kind of the crying call of Poland. Let's get richer. Let's become part of the new world. And so I'm happy for them for that. And I'm happy to have started in a country which was fortunate enough to be in such a place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Amen to that.
yeah, amen.
And I can
Seriously.
see that the innovative, approach and making things happen,
Mm,
taking steps, I can see that in your life professionally, even though you're just 20.
yeah.
Seems like you've achieved a lot, or at least you're aiming to achieve a lot already.
I am very interested in doing things.
Mm.
I like I kind of have this almost obsessive attitude where if there's a part of my day where I'm not doing anything, I want to be doing something.
To fill it in.
Yeah, yeah, to fill it in with something.
Yeah,
Um, and so I always fill it in with something. It's just kind of my mode of operation. I like doing things, and so if the only disadvantage to such an attitude, in my mind, is it's sometimes difficult to relax. It's like I'm always revved up. It's like
mhm,
I'm a engine that's going at 5,000 RPM,
mhm,
and it's sometimes possible to overheat. I've done it in the past. Even over the summer, I've had a bit of a crisis, you could say,
mhm.
and so I had to go talk to a psychologist myself and just try to understand the context of what I was feeling and what I was struggling with. So there's trade-offs to everything.
Yeah,
I think my approach is just to make it increasingly healthy as I go along.
yeah,
I think that it is healthy in that it contributes to other people's work. You have the chance to, we have the chance to chat together right now, even though, a year ago we didn't even know each other.
that's true.
Isn't that's like something to think about because it's just so incredible that through the kind of capacities that you have, through the kind of effort that you're able to apply, you're able to change other people's experience significantly
Yeah,
and help them out quite a bit. So I think that's kind of, if you want like a personal crying call that I have, I think that'd be like trying to help people, trying to um, work with others, collaborate on different projects to make things happen. So for instance, right now I'm working on an AI testing application where what you input is either a bit of text, a PDF with educational content that you've been learning about. And what it outputs is an examination, a test, which essentially assesses whether you've understood it correctly.
mm,
And so that gives you the chance to not only to learn things, because in the process of creating something like that, you do learn things, but also to assess whether what you've learned and where your learning gaps are. So I think that's kind of the main purpose of it, the main work which I'm doing right now, the main goal behind it is to make sure that it helps students or my intended audience at the moment, it could be teachers as well, to actually learn from the service which I'm providing. So that's a bit of a like a tangent into another project that I've been working
but I
with.
see your point. You're thrilled about this because it allows you to help people, and it's a
Yes.
project and it's an initiative
Yeah.
that probably, millions of people can access.
It's millions of people can potentially access it. Who
Potentially.
knows? It'll be I expect it to be a 100 to 200 people project.
Yeah.
Like as in 200 people can benefit from it, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, but it is scalable.
Millions of people can access it
Can. Yes, that's
and should.
the can and should. That's the with every entrepreneurial idea, you always go into I right now it's serving 100 to 200 people, but imagine the
Imagine.
possibilities.
You wait.
Yeah. That's I love that kind of attitude in people. It can get excessive. Sometimes it can get to an extent where, for example, I've been pitched a few ideas because I do a little bit of programming, and
Mm,
people who don't know programming and how to make websites, for example, they often that's often the thing that's preventing their idea from being realized.
Yeah.
And so they look to me to give them suggestions or to, well, to really give them support in
Yeah.
creating something like that. And when I hear pitches, usually what I'm hearing is there is a demand. So everybody tries to capture the demand. That's good. There is a demand. So, for example, there's these interviewers who are struggling um, to process in all of their applications in time because let's say there's 1,000 applications. Um, then they say, so my idea is to help them automate that process by XYZ. And the potential for it is potentially millions of interviewers or hiring managers benefiting from this tool. And so that sounds good.
Yeah.
It sounds like, wow, maybe this has potential.
Yeah.
But the problem is they haven't considered the consequences, the negative consequences that can also be related
Like what?
to such a endeavor. So, for instance, if you think about it, why haven't people automated interviewing already? I think that's probably the most important question is why haven't people done the thing that you've had an idea about
Yeah.
already? Because surely there's smart people around.
Yeah.
Surely they
There'll
can
be a reason.
realize
Yeah.
that a lot of people are struggling with it. So then the question is, why haven't they done it? And unless you assess the real challenges which are involved with it, then you really have no idea what you're getting into. And so you could be getting into a project that will last 2 years and will be unfruitful
Mm.
because maybe it's very challenging to automate. Maybe there's some nuances
Mm.
that you cannot pick up by just using a machine.
Yeah.
Go on.
So you think it would come down to the weakness of um, computer software?
Weakness of computer software, the constraints of it, and also if it's really easy to do, for example, then the amount of competition you'll have. Because if it's really easy to do, then again, you have to empathize with other people who have the same ideas. 100 other applications like this
Yeah.
will pop up. They will pop up. If it's easy and it is potentially profitable,
Mm.
then someone will do it because people are looking out for profit. They're looking out to make a change. You're not the only person who's like that. And so it's really something to consider. You have to find this perfect balance almost of this is new enough to where no one has yet thought of it, and it is hard enough to do that no one's going to just do it next day and completely
Yeah.
undermine the market which I have. And so there is those are really the challenges which you have to consider in considering to make a business, which a lot of the students I know, they just don't think about stuff like that. Uh, I think one of the books which has really influenced my view of this subject has been Lean Startup. Um, in it, you essentially learn a process of experimentation and adjustment of your initial hypotheses. So
Okay.
let's say you have a hypothesis. I believe that um, the interviewing application which I'm creating will yield this potential audience, and it will be hard um, to be supplanted by another competitor. So that's your hypothesis. That's essentially, if you clearly lay it out, that's the guess which you have, which you're coming in with when you're beginning this project. And so then the process of really scientific experimentation is okay, is that true? You're trying to examine your assumptions and break them down. I think that's something that is not only done in business by, I suppose, more competent business professionals, but also in clinical psychology. We try to clearly lay out what is it that actually is troubling you? What do you think it is?
Hmm.
What do you think is wrong with you, for example?
Mm.
We don't say it that way because it's like, what's wrong with you, man? That would be the most empathetic approach. We kind of slowly get into it, I
Kind of ways.
suppose. But you help them ask themselves, you think there's something wrong with you. Tell me what you think that is, and we'll try to examine why you think that.
Mm.
And we'll see if it is indeed true. Usually it isn't. I mean, it never is really because people are not I don't think people are um, somehow naturally evil or
Mhm.
anything like that. I think you kind of have to believe that people are good and they're trying to trend towards the good um, when you're going into a field like clinical psychology. Um,
Sounds like a positive psychology approach.
it is, it is. I think so. I don't know. Have you had that experience where you've your belief in someone's goodness has really pushed you to continue and try to empathize on and on with your client, even though they were maybe not the nicest.
I think it's just a framework that it works, and it's kind of you can look at it in a kind of spiritual way. The idea that um, we are made in God's image, and we have something divine inside of us because of that. And I think that's what's really meant by that phrase. And if you look at each person as having a piece of the divine inside of them,
Mm,
this touch the microphone, this
mhm,
potential to move upwards and to orient their life upwards to
mm,
something good. Um, and it's really the idea that everyone has that potential.
mm,
And so maybe if you take a positive approach, which is a technical term in
mhm.
positive psychology, if you take that approach, maybe clinical psychology is about pointing people, you know, help them to realize what is divine about them,
Yeah.
feel that potential. I haven't particularly had that kind of problem in my
Mm,
own experience. Um, I think a lot of the time in clinical psychology as well, it's different from social work where you sort of introduce yourself into a situation that is a messy social situation and you can try and practice therapy to try and solve it.
mm.
With clinical psychology, people come to you
Yeah.
and are going to pay or not pay, but they have to sign up and they have to turn up. So they probably want to solve whatever problem they're facing.
There's already a commitment.
Exactly, yeah. So they've already part of them has found that positive part of themselves,
Mm,
and it's about fostering that.
mm,
So, yeah, I think it's a really I don't know how accurate it is on an objective level, whether everyone has this positive I suspect it's probably true,
mm.
but it's certainly, I think, very useful, and it kind of underpins I think it really does underpin clinical psychology overall.
Yeah, yeah. I That's one of the reasons why I kind of love that discipline is people who go into it have a certain set of beliefs, or hopefully they have a certain set of
Yeah,
beliefs.
they have a philosophy.
They have a philosophy. That's right. They have a philosophy that's not only, um, they don't have a philosophy. They have a specific philosophy as
Mm,
well, and that philosophy is usually more um, inspiring to me, more life affirming, I'd say.
mm.
So there's something about it which helps you think, maybe I'm not so bad. Maybe I'm better than what I think I am. And that's essentially the goal of it, is you're helping people go through that process. You're like a bit of a prompt for something like that, prompt for insight um, in that sense. But anyway, coming back to you asked me about
So what's your story? I said
yeah,
something like that.
yeah. What's my story? And so I went on this long diatribe about Polish history and how my dad had to
The
put
bread and the
sugar
sugar.
into put sugar
Rucksack.
into a rucksack,
That
which
was
I
funny.
suppose was not fully answering your question. So maybe I'll come back to
It was
that.
welcome though, I
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
yeah. It's a good story. It's a good story. Certainly something that helped me empathize with that guy. Because yeah, over the summer I've had more time to spend with my dad too, and I didn't really know him all that much because one of um, the characteristics of my life to this point has been I've been traveling all over the world, and it's usually without my family that I traveled. So I've been first to Portugal, but no, sorry, not first to Portugal. First, I was to the US, and back to Poland, went to the UK, then to the US, and then to Portugal, and then to the US, and then to the UK again. It's maybe I even missed
How
something.
much time do we
Yeah,
have?
it's a long, long story.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel really old when I think of those past memories, but a major element of it has been I didn't spend much time with my family. I did not have much um, of an experience of what a family is really like, because my parents split up when I was about 7, and that was actually the initiator for my first voyage to the US.
Mm.
I actually flew alone, which was a very momentous experience, something that I remember to this day.
How old were you?
7. Yeah, so I was, about that age, and I remember also I was given 2 cool advantages. The first one was I got to sit in business class because it just happened to be empty, and so I had a better chair. So that's one cool thing. And then the second, I got to go to the pilot's, cockpit and there see it from the front.
Wow.
So I went with a stewardess, who essentially just invited me to the
Do
cockpit,
you
and
think
she
they
was like,
just felt bad that you were on your own? They wanted to make you feel more comfortable?
I don't know. I don't think so. But they were just seeing a kid who's just kind of sitting there excited, and maybe they probably wanted to do something fun for him.
Especially if it's a kid that looked like you as well, with round glasses and stuff.
Well, now mind you, I did have these same glasses 13 years ago,
Wow.
but I don't even think I had glasses back then.
Okay.
Maybe I didn't.
It's all I can picture though.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like this big 7-year-old.
Yeah.
um,
Anyway, you were talking about you, were
yeah,
traveling when you were
yeah,
7.
yeah. So I traveled to the USA, and that was my first experience kind of being alone. It was with my grandmother, who I didn't really know at that time because she was always living in the US. Um, and so that was my first experience of kind of traveling on my own, of going to another country and really learning a new language. I didn't even know English at that time.
Mm.
So it's like that's a I remember going to examinations and they were all in English, of course. And I just put question marks on all of them. I was like, I have no idea what's going on here. So that was just a very memorable experience, primarily because I thought, okay, I need to start becoming independent. I need to start figuring things out on my own because if I don't, then I don't have anyone who's around me who can tell me what to
Yeah.
do. Or there's no natural guidance for me. So I have to guide myself in a sense. And so that's kind of set up a very independent minded attitude.
Yeah.
Um, which again, it has its pros, it has its cons. I remember when I was in um, middle school, so kind of like 13, 14, I was quite rebellious. I had situations where I was just suspended for a few days or a day, and that happened on multiple occasions because I was just thinking the teachers are against me.
Uh,
I have to fight them,
so what
and
did you do?
I did fight them.
You fought them?
No, no, no. I didn't physically fight anyone. It was more intellectual in my case. It was one of the things my friends and I started was a large. We called it the gallery,
Mhm.
where we were learning Photoshop at that time. For a little bit of context, we were learning Photoshop, and then we had no inspiration for how to apply it.
Right.
And so our inspiration came in the form of photoshopping teachers' faces onto different um, situational contexts.
Oh, no.
So it was like, I don't know, what were some memorable ones? I think there was one where there was an arsonist was burning something, and we put the face of one of our science teachers who was working with flames usually, and she talked about it. And so it was just, depending on the situation, it was different things like that. At the time, I thought it was really funny. I have to say, some part of me still thinks it's funny.
Pretty funny.
Only the offensive ones, I've changed my mind on that. There were some offensive ones. I won't tell you about them because it's just distasteful. But there were ones where they were genuinely clever. It's like I thought it was a creative expression of a lot of students there because in the end there was about think 20 people who were working on that, so creating them actively, and there were
Wow.
about over 100 people who were the audience members, you could say. They were looking at it.
Oh my
So it
goodness.
it just grew so
You
fast,
had a
so quickly.
company.
We essentially
It was
made a
like an
company.
entertainment company.
Yeah. I
Oh,
would say a
no.
parody company.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was kind of my understanding of it. Um and everyone thought it was so hilarious. I remember distinctly just sitting in class and just rolling laughing from every new thing that was coming up. Um,
So the teachers didn't like this? You got in trouble for this?
that's right, yes. Especially the more inappropriate ones. There were some like that, that just started edging from parody to maybe even bullying. So I was a moderator of that. I should have predicted and have anticipated that. Um, I have not, and so that's one of the reasons why I was suspended. And there were other things like that. I was a very showy person. I liked
Mm.
doing things to
The attention.
impress. Yeah, I like the attention, impress and play with others. I just honestly I still love doing that. It's
Mhm.
just I hope it's more mature now. And in a sense, like it's
Yeah.
not offending to
Now
anyone.
you just greet everyone you see and everyone knows you by
Exactly.
name in the
Exactly.
entire
I
university.
yes, I do know quite a few people. Um,
Great.
yeah.
Means you're good at your job as a student.
I'm hoping to be. Yeah, so it's enjoyable. It was enjoyable. It still, in a sense, is enjoyable for me to attend to people. It's almost like a duty. I feel a little bit.
Hmm.
I have a sense of a desire for everyone to kind of feel included. And so, at the beginning of this year, no, sorry, not this year, the last year, first year of psychology, I kind of know that I have certain social skill sets which help
Mhm.
me connect people. And so I tried to the best of my ability to kind of aid in other people's connection with others. And I think I've done that successfully. So, um, and I tell you that because a few people later in the year have come up to me explicitly and they said, man, without the ability to have had the groups that we had, which they thought was thanks to me. I thought it was more like just a natural emergence.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have the kind of interactions I have now. I wouldn't have the kind of friends that I have now. And so I was really grateful for that.
So tell me more about what you actually did there with making these groups.
Yeah. So essentially, the first day of school, the first day of university is a time when no one knows no one,
No.
essentially. And so the ability to go up to people and be like, "Hi, my name is blah blah blah. What's your name?" And then remembering that name, and for next time, uh, going back to those people, and then as you integrate more people into your own social network, trying to connect them with one another.
Yeah.
So just having that ability has allowed me to help people who would not have done it by themselves.
Yeah.
I know that it's a common struggle for people to go up to others and be like,
Mm.
"Hi, my name is,"
Yeah.
and that they cower and run away.
Yeah, I've been there.
Um, yeah, I've certainly been there as well, so I can also empathize with that. But I've kind of decided that I would like to be more
Proactive.
proactive, I guess. Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Just to try to be more of the person which people need me to be at that time.
Yeah.
So I thought that that was really my mm, goal in the first few days of school.
Yeah, and I don't mean to flatter you, but I think you've single-handedly made psychology like a social course where people know each other.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, because it's kind of like an anchor because not many people know each other, but probably almost everyone knows Hugo.
Mm,
Um, and you kind of introduce people to each other. And
mm,
I think literally it takes one person out of 400 to be the guy that does that
mm.
for the whole system to function.
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's beautiful to me because social networks are so mathematical. I
Yeah.
think that you kind of have this. Uh, I don't know if you know how snowflakes form, but you have this little crystallization point, and then it just grows out from there. And
Fractal.
yeah, it's like a fractal. It is a fractal, actually.
Okay.
Um, I've read a lot about that, so
Yeah.
it's just
I
it.
just know the word. I don't know anything
Yes,
about it.
it's incredibly fascinating, that subject as well, but, a bit of a too much of a
Too
tangent.
much.
So I'll go back to that, the idea that conversations are a little bit mathematical and interactions, I think, because it's like, different magnets are kind of interacting with one another, and sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't,
Mhm.
but all you need is a little bit of activation energy, so you like it's like throwing a magnet into this whole group of them, and it all clicks together
Yeah.
simultaneously. So all you need is a little bit of just energy to prompt it. It's like turning on a really old lawnmower. It's like,
Yeah. It takes a spark. What's the phrase? Every forest fire starts with a spark, something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that?
something like that. So that's the idea. There has to be some activation energy, and
Mm.
I think that's true of a lot of things. It's mm, like for this podcast, I you can feel at the beginning, or at least I felt at the beginning, it was just a slog to get through all
Yeah.
of it. It's like, okay, I need to schedule this guest. Okay, I need to figure out where we can go. I
Mm,
need to figure this out. I need to figure this out. All of this stuff has to be essentially reasoned through until you've reached a certain point where it's all working together simultaneously.
yeah,
And that's when you can get most of your productive work done. So you need to get through that difficult stage. And I almost take pride in it, and I love to go through that difficult stage. It's like maybe it's like a self-hatred thing, or maybe I think it's more like a self-disciplining kind of attitude where I expect it to be there, and when it happens, I know that it's part of something that's gonna be really good in the future. So, this podcast is something like that. I mean, look at the conversation we're having now. I just love this.
yeah.
Seriously. So it just takes time. It just takes a little bit of effort, but I think you just have to start with a little bit of courage as well. It's like for podcasting going up to people, and it often is going up to people
Yeah.
that is the thing people feel most afraid of.
Yeah, and it's lecturers and it's PhD people.
Yeah,
They
they
feel like
feel so intimidating. They're sitting or standing in front of the class
yeah,
and they're telling you about things that you don't understand.
yeah, and they look so
And
important.
they look so important because they have this turtleneck or
Yeah.
something. Well, we're not talking about Steve Jobs, but still, it is quite it can be quite intimidating. But I think one thing that has helped me with not feeling intimidated by authority figures is, again, I think that kind of independent, I don't give a shit attitude.
Mm,
Um, it has kind of morphed into something more productive than it was. But I thought, they're not no better than me. That was the idea when I
mm,
was 13, 14. They're no better than me. Why should I care? I'm just going to go up to them. And if I want to have a conversation, I'll have a conversation. I don't care.
yeah,
Yeah. So it was like this immature sort of approach. But I think it's kind of slowly matured as I've realized that, they're people too. I don't have to not care.
yeah,
I can care about someone, but even if they're completely different age than me, completely different life situation, and have a different degree of success. So it's a great it's a great experience to know someone like that, and I think that they appreciate a lot because
mm,
oftentimes I have the impression, at least, that at least the staff that I was talking to, they often feel disconnected from the students. They feel that they don't. mm, they don't quite get what they want from their teaching in
yeah,
that area because they're hoping, okay, I'm going to have some engaging discussions with the
mm,
students who are passionate about what they're doing. Maybe the students want to do that as well, but there's this bridge of courage that is missing.
yeah,
And I really urge people who feel that they're capable of something like that to be a bit of that bridge because when you talk to teachers, when you talk to professors, they just light up when they can tell you something
they
new.
love it.
They
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's why it's like, I was surprised that when I started the podcast, I was very surprised that people were so willing to
Oh,
go to
yeah,
them.
so
They were
eager.
just like, oh, please
Yeah,
let me go. They just couldn't figure out the schedule, but that's like a human thing.
yeah. It's a
Um,
chance to say what they want to say and to be asked questions, and people love to talk about themselves.
yes, obviously. And I mean, when you have a microphone and when you have a little microphone, you just feel so distinguished as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
You
yeah.
feel like you're doing something important, and
I'm
you are, I
important
think.
for this hour. Yeah, the most
We're
important
all
person.
important.
Yeah. Well,
So
yeah.
I think that, yeah, I think that's a big point is just having a little bit of that courage to get going, to
Mm,
get into things that you're unfamiliar with. One experience which I've had um, in the past, I remember in late middle school, early high school times, I had the chance to like really make friends with two different teachers because they were really nice and I they were really open to someone talking to them. And so that's what I did because I was fairly chatty. I still am. Um, we started talking and you just learn about that person's life and you think, my God, he's so similar to me in so many ways. They have a big beard or they're bald or they have this status as a teacher. But they're so similar to me. They're just people. And so once you bridge that gap, then everyone kind of becomes a person. It's no
Mm.
longer this barrier of they're this person, they're this special person who sits at the front of the class and tells me what to do, and so I can't interfere with that process. Mm, um, to name drop a little bit, it's not really a name drop, is it? Because no one will know these people, but my favorite, those teachers were Mr. McCallan and Mr. Gross, who both of whom were just, I thought they were incredible teachers, because they were both actually interested in what they were doing. And I admire that in anyone. If someone is actually passionate about what they do, if they like talking about what they do, that's the kind of person I like to hang out with.
Yeah.
So they had that. And so when I asked them about, okay, so why did you get into this? What interests you about this? They were able to actually talk about it for quite a long time. And through that, we've kind of developed a academics-based relationship, which slowly transitioned into a more holistic,
Mm.
as in I know uh, who your wife is, I know more about you, and so just breaking through that gap of there's someone else, they're like this other um, species almost person. Um, I think that broke it for any person,
Mm.
and so now it's not difficult for me to talk to pretty much anyone. So sure, I do get more intimidated by some people than others because some people have a more discerning understanding. Some people are like, they're incredibly well versed
Mhm.
in what they're talking about. For example, I have a grandfather who's a literary professor and he knows a lot of languages. And sometimes I try to tell him some comment about French and what I was thinking about it. And I know that he knows French. He's translated text from French to English or from, yeah, from French to English. And I just think, ooh, don't say anything stupid because he'll point it out
I get
immediately.
you.
It's like if you know that there's the potential for judgment. And I think that's a um,
Yeah.
big thing which scares you.
How many languages does he know?
Oh my God, seriously. He knows 15
Oh.
and some of them are not even in existence anymore. It's like I don't know, some ancient Greek, some
Yeah.
um,
Dragon tongue?
yeah, yeah, he's well versed in that one. House of the Dragon, he knows all the
Elven?
text
Yeah.
without having to have subtitles.
15
Um,
languages.
yeah, so mm, he's crazy about that stuff. He's really really fantastic man. But yeah, so you do have more intimidating people, especially if you know that you're not if you're talking a little bit outside of your comfort zone, where
Yeah.
you're saying things that you kind of hypothesize are true, but you're not certain are true, and they know
They know.
that you don't know.
Yeah.
So if you don't actually know. So that is a big one. That is a big one.
Just about humility, isn't it? And
It is,
asking
yeah.
good questions.
That's a really good point actually. If you have humility in how you speak, then you actually don't have to worry about that. You can say, I'm guessing that's true. I think that's it, but I could always be wrong. And then
Yeah.
what are they going to say? Yes, in this case, you are actually wrong. And it's not like, ooh, because you're a moron.
Yeah.
That people don't respond in that way generally. So having humility or approaching it with the beginnings of humility,
Yeah.
um, that's just here's so many of um, the ills of being judged.
Yeah.
I think that it also helps with something called imposter syndrome. Do you know what that is? Yeah, imposter syndrome. I've known a few people who've had that, and my best guess for why that was, is because they're the kind of people who, when they talk about things, they don't have very much humility. They talk about it as though they
Ah.
invented the universe,
Yeah.
and they're incredibly skilled, and they're trying to project that. And so the
Mm.
more you project a false image of yourself, I think you kind of internally realize that,
There's an incongruence, isn't
there's an
there? You feel
incongruence.
that.
That's precisely right. I think there's something they realize that's in themselves that they're projecting, that they're not projecting correctly.
Yeah.
And so this cognitive dissonance, I'm showing this to others, but I'm actually like this. I think this contrast kind of makes you uneasy in yourself,
Yeah.
just constantly uneasy in yourself. And the more you do it, the more you're saying, yeah, what can I say? I did it all by myself.
Yeah.
Or I didn't study for this exam
Yeah.
totally, even though you did study for the exam. It's it hurts you. It hurts you
Yeah,
because you have that feeling of, "Why am I lying to people all the time?" I
yeah,
think everybody knows when they're I think most people know when they're explicitly not accurate in what they're saying.
yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you think that there's situations where people don't actually realize they're so unreflective that they don't realize what they're saying? Or do you think that there's some intuitive understanding of it?
It's hard to say. There's I think often there's a part of yourself that maybe you don't realize, maybe it's unconscious that knows that you're kidding yourself.
Mm,
But it's easy to just persuade yourself that I mean, people who are really maybe narcissistic or really have this sense of grandeur,
mm,
um, it's hard to say whether that's a defense mechanism against feeling insecure,
yeah,
and that's the only way they know how to cope with not being perfect or not being amazing, is just to convince themselves that they're amazing.
yeah,
And that can be really ingrained.
mm,
But that's interesting what you're saying there about a kind of an approach to handling imposter syndrome is just to be humble about it,
mm.
to to realize it's okay not to know everything. You don't
Seriously.
have to know everything.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and I
It's
think it's because you can have imposter syndrome because you feel there's a pressure from other people. They're expecting you to know things, and you're like, I'm really new here.
mm,
Um, but if you have this pressure from inside because you've created that persona,
yeah,
then you know that's your responsibility.
yeah.
That's a different situation.
That's right. I think you make a really good point that it's not always the pressure is not always from within. Sometimes it's literally, okay, I've gone to this really high class university. Now they're expecting 10 times more of me.
Yeah,
Am I actually fit to handle it all? Or I have this job where I don't know anything that they're telling me about. Even though that's kind of, I assume they think that I know it. Can I handle it? I think that's a completely different dimension of feeling imposter syndrome that I haven't really shared or haven't really considered in that context. So yeah, yeah. I don't know what the I suppose sometimes you fairly can feel imposter syndrome in
it's
that
fair.
case. It's
Yeah,
like you maybe you actually don't know.
you'd often. It's good to talk about it, and it was a big thing when I started my internship at Overcome.
Yeah.
We would kind of talk about that a little bit. We'd have like a daily meeting with our cohort to discuss how we're doing. Um, and often it would come up. It would be like, I'm really struggling with imposter syndrome. Um, because we'd laugh about it because we all felt the same thing.
Yeah.
But that was exactly the remedy to realize that we all feel the same thing. It
Mm.
feels like this is kind of too fast and that I'm not going to be good enough to be able to do this. Um, but you'd feel better after those meetings. Say, okay, I'm not alone in this. I'm not um, the only unqualified person here.
Yeah. And just for context, Marshall's Overcome internship was related to clinical psychology. And so he was first training to become a clinical psychologist. And then you had some clients, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's the the role was mental health coach.
Mm.
I think titles are very protected. So
Yes.
mental health coach is a very new and kind of loose term. But they train us in some basic forms of counseling, I would say, just active
Mm.
listening and um, kind of cognitive approaches.
Yes.
And yeah, we had some low risk clients just to talk through coaching things they wanted to change about their lives, and I think it was quite a really good initiative.
Yeah.
I think it was just the fact that you would see people one to one, and they're coming in expecting it. Probably a lot of people will go in expecting you to be a therapist.
Right.
So it's about establishing those boundaries of like, I'm not a qualified therapist. I have some level of training and coaching. Here's what I can help you with.
Yeah.
Um, but the imposter syndrome is there from, I think it's probably from the expectations that you imagine your clients have from you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or yeah, exactly. I think you've pointed it out exactly as it is. You think what other people think of you. It's not
Yeah,
just what they actually think of you because it's not always true
yeah,
what you think others think of you.
yeah,
I've found it to be the case. I've reflected on that quite a bit over the summer that I sometimes would look at another person and think, "Oh, they definitely think this sometimes negative thing about me, sometimes positive." And then I realized I have no idea what they think. They could
yeah,
think anything because they're coming from a completely different context. Right now, they could be completely pass it off, or it could have ruined their whole day.
Yeah.
So, um, if you have that sort of range, and if you have a little enough understanding of that other person, then you really have no idea what they're thinking about. I
Yeah.
sometimes don't have an idea what I'm thinking about, so it's hard
Yeah.
to say what others are thinking about.
And how vain am I to think that people are thinking about me and have
Oh,
opinions of me, and,
exactly.
they've got
Everyone's
their own
thinking
things.
about me. Yeah, when I
Exactly.
come into the room, everyone's looking at me and thinking, "Mhm,
Yeah,
that
and
guy."
it matters, and I'm a
Yes,
big deal.
I'm a big
Even
deal.
if it's negative, it's still vanity, and it's worth avoiding that.
Yeah, it's worth examination for sure. Um, yeah, so I think that you made a great point about um, not like setting up expectations. I think
Yeah.
that's a big thing, and I think one of the reasons why imposter syndrome can appear in that case, based on what I'm learning from you, is not setting up expectations correctly. Maybe in your resume you write, "I know this perfectly," and then they tell you, "Okay, so do it." And you realize you know it, maybe you've done 7 days with
Yeah.
that, and you don't know what's going on, and you realize, "Ah, I lied. I
Yeah.
see." So I think that there's a lot to be said about setting up proper expectations. Not only understanding, mm, not only understanding that what you said towards others is important, but also how you present yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
How you present, how you continue to present yourself, and how you continue to set those expectations.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's actually something I'm curious about. When you set up those expectations, do you think that it kind of eased some of the pressure from that conversation?
With your client, you mean
Yeah.
specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, big time. It's really a fundamental aspect of clinical psychology, and anyone who's thinking of going into therapy or counseling in their training will learn a lot about this, establishing the professional boundaries of your relationship and establishing what you're there for. It's called contracting. You have an agreement of this is what, you know, this is what you need from me for this to work. And this is what we both need to make this work and go in the direction that we need it to go.
Mhm.
Um, and it's exactly that. It's setting up expectations. It's setting up this is what I can help you with. This is what I can't help you with. You can't call me on weekends. You can't do this and that because
Mhm.
um, it takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of interpersonal skills to have that difficult conversation.
Yeah.
But it's completely necessary because if that um, relationship is kind of muddy and you're not sure how personal it is and how professional it is,
Yeah.
then there will be these expectations. There might be an expectation, I should be more specific, for you to be able to solve their problems
Mhm.
or to cure them.
Mm.
Um, I'm speaking as if you're a therapist, for you
Yeah.
to make decisions for them, tell them what to do. These are things that you can and should never do as a counselor or a therapist. And to have that expectation, you can never establish the relationship that you need for progress. So, yeah, I definitely think that setting expectations is huge because one of the fundamental, and we can go more into this another time, but
Mhm.
one of the fundamentals of therapy is that the relationship that you have itself is curative or it's healing.
Yeah. That's its goal, essentially.
Yeah, that's probably the main goal. And maybe it's not the main goal, but it's one of maybe three main goals, something like that. Um, that if you can have a relationship with a third party who would otherwise not know anything about your life, all they know about your life is from the conversations that you're having with them.
Yes.
You get to make your story and they will believe you and they'll trust you. Well, depends, but you have the opportunity to have somebody who will listen without judgment, more care, and will like you,
Mm.
will, have this positive regard unconditionally, will empathize with you, and will listen to you and hear you all the way out.
Mm.
And that in itself is healing.
Yeah.
That's therapeutic. And it's really a profound idea. It's I think it's partially a religious idea. I
Mm.
think we've talked about this before. There's
Yeah.
the passage, I think it's something like where two or more people meet in my name, my spirit is with them.
Yeah.
And I was talking about God is with them. And it's this idea that if you speak to someone else and it's focused on the truth and it's focused on um being honest and transparent, in the spirit of truth, then spirit of truth and healing will be with you.
Yeah.
And that's really it's a religious idea, but it's deeply true.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have a secular approach to it with therapy, but um, the relationship itself needs to be clearly outlined,
Yeah.
and that gives the security for the therapist. That gives this the security and the anchor for the client to rely,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is healing.
I I like your metaphor of like an anchor almost,
Mm,
because you are setting um it's like you're setting the scene
mm,
for a movie almost. And so by setting it up correctly, you're then able to convey the right things
yeah,
at the right time. And so if they have the expectation, "Oh, I can call them anytime and tell them when I'm feeling sad,"
yeah,
then maybe they're gonna reflect less on their experiences. Maybe they're
mm,
gonna, mm, miss the times when you actually should be doing it. You know,
yeah,
there's different things that I suppose, um, are a consequence of setting it up incorrectly. So I'm really fascinated by what you said. I was not aware that it was so prominent in
yeah.
clinical
Big part
psychology.
of the training. Yeah, you can think. I like your metaphor. You can think of it as like if you have a project with multiple what would you say employees,
Yes.
and you're kind of trying to achieve the same thing. You need to all have a shared goal. You need to have a shared
Right.
vision.
It's like almost like a role. It's
Yeah,
like I'm this guy, you're
yeah,
this guy.
exactly. Yeah, and you
Let's
need to
play
be
these
working
roles
towards the
together.
same thing.
Yeah.
And it sounds very rudimentary, but because it is, um, it's just two people, but they have different roles, and
Mm.
they need to have one goal, and they need to have an idea of how they're going to get there. And yeah, like you said, it gives them that anchor, that security. Um, and I think if it's like you said with the calling every time you're sad, part of that I think is about establishing independence.
Yeah.
You have someone you can talk to every week. Um, but it is that one time every week, and you can rely on that, but also we're gonna work on you not needing to rely on it because it won't last forever.
Mm.
So yeah, there's tons of reasons why it's important. It's I think probably why it's so prominent is due to legal reasons and
Of
legislative
course. Yeah.
yeah, and following guidelines, which is there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Following ethical guidelines.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I know you have to go in a few minutes, so I
Oh,
think we'll
time
end it
already?
here. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
incredible.
Well, it was great to learn a bit more about you. I've learned a
Oh,
lot actually.
lovely. I'm surprised how much we got and how much more we still have
So
to
much
go
more.
through. Seriously, it's like I think I told you like 3 stories and there's probably like 300.
Structured perfect.
We should probably do a whole series on all
We
this stuff,
should,
and
yeah.
then we can talk about all that you're experiencing because
Yeah.
as we've pivoted to a little bit now, you've also got a whole I would say a whole spectrum of experiences which I don't have much knowledge of. So I'd love to learn more about, for example, your send teaching, more about the internship which you were referring to, more about your research, all that interesting stuff coming down to
Stay
podcast
tuned.
near you.
Yeah, yeah. Stay tuned. Yeah, there's
All
more
right.
a lot more to come.
Well, lovely to see you,
Thank you, Marshall.
Marshall.
Good to talk to you again.
Bye bye.
Bye.